3 knocks. My name is Ion, and I never believed in things like spirits, omens, or warnings, at least not until I moved into that house. It was an old, isolated building on the edge of the city, the kind of place people avoid even during the day. I rented it because it was cheap and because I had nowhere else to go. The landlord was a strange old man who barely spoke. While handing over the keys, he paused for a long moment and told me in a trembling voice that if I ever heard knocking late at night, I should never open the door, no matter what. I smiled politely and nodded, not taking him seriously, assuming it was just an old man's superstition. The first 2 nights passed quietly, though the silence felt heavy, almost like the house was holding its breath. On the 3rd night, I stayed awake studying, fighting sleep. The clock on the wall ticked loudly, echoing through the empty house, until suddenly it stopped feeling normal. When I checked my phone, the time read exactly 3:03 a.m. At that moment, 3 sharp knocks echoed through the house, slow, firm, deliberate. Knock, knock, knock. My heart dropped into my stomach. I stared at the front door, unable to move. Whoever it was did not knock again. No footsteps followed. No voice called out my name. After several minutes of silence, I convinced myself it was nothing, maybe a neighbor, maybe the wind. But deep down, I knew those knocks were intentional. The next night, at the same time, 3:03 a.m., the knocking returned. Again, exactly 3 knocks. This time the sound felt heavier, closer, like the door was being struck from just inches away. My throat went dry as I whispered, "Who is it?" There was no response. Instead, the temperature in the room dropped, and the silence became unbearable. Later that night, as I lay in bed trying to sleep, I heard something far worse. The sound of knocking did not come from the door. It came from inside the wall beside my bed. Fear consumed me after that night. I barely slept, and when morning came, I confronted the landlord, telling him everything. The moment I mentioned the 3 knocks, his face lost all color. He asked me if I had answered the door. When I said no, he whispered that I was still safe, for now. He explained that the knocks always come in 3s and never stop once they begin. He refused to tell me what was knocking, only warning me that if I ever heard a familiar voice, I must ignore it, because whatever knocks knows how to wear the voices of the living. That night, I locked every door and window and kept the lights on. My heart pounded with every second that passed. Then, once again, at 3:03 a.m., the sound returned. 3 knocks, louder than ever, shaking the door slightly. Before I could react, a soft voice called my name, from outside the door. It was my mother's voice. She sounded frightened, begging me to let her in, saying she was cold and lost. Tears filled my eyes, but I remembered the warning. My mother was far away. As soon as I stayed silent, the voice changed. It became deeper, distorted, and amused. It told me that this was the 3rd visit and that the 3rd knock meant permission. The lights flickered violently, and I felt something move inside the house, footsteps that weren't footsteps, breathing that wasn't human. I noticed something horrifying then. There was no shadow under the door. Whatever was knocking was not standing outside. It was already inside, moving through the walls, crawling through the darkness, learning my fear. By the 3rd day, I had decided to leave the house forever. I packed my bags before sunset, refusing to stay another night. But before I could leave, something pulled me upstairs, to the part of the house the landlord had told me never to enter. The door was unlocked. Inside, the room smelled of decay and old blood. The walls were scratched deeply, as if someone had tried to escape. Written across the wall in dried blood were the words, 3 knocks mean the door is no longer closed. Beneath the message were names, people who had lived in the house before me. The last name was mine. Before I could scream, the door behind me slammed shut. The knocking returned, but this time it was not on the door or the walls. It was inside my chest, beating in rhythm with my heart. A whisper filled the room, calm and gentle, telling me that since I never opened the door, it decided to become part of me instead. When I opened my eyes, I was back in my bed, morning sunlight pouring through the window. For a moment, I believed it was over. Then I noticed something wrong. My reflection in the mirror smiled back at me, but I wasn't smiling. From behind the glass, something knocked 3 times, slowly, from the inside out. And in that moment, I understood the truth. The knocks were never asking for permission to enter the house. They were waiting for permission to stay inside me. And once the 3rd knock is answered, the door never closes again.